Imagine for a moment that you're standing in the middle of a raging storm, but instead of being tossed around by the winds, you remain perfectly still, unmoved by the chaos swirling around you. This isn't a fantasy or some mystical power. This is the reality that ancient Stoic philosophers discovered over 2,000 years ago, and it's a reality that can completely transform your life today. What if I told you that the secret to unshakable peace, genuine happiness, and true success isn't found in controlling the world around you, but in mastering the one thing you truly have power over, your own mind and emotional responses? This ancient wisdom, tested in the crucible of Roman battlefields, political upheavals, and personal tragedies, holds the key to a life of profound freedom and inner strength. The question that has plagued humanity since the dawn of consciousness is this: why do we suffer when life doesn't go according to our plans? Why do we find ourselves at the mercy of circumstances beyond our control, feeling helpless, anxious, and overwhelmed? The answer lies not in changing the external world, which is largely beyond our influence, but in fundamentally shifting how we relate to that world. Today, you're going to discover how emotional detachment, properly understood through the lens of Stoic philosophy, can liberate you from the tyranny of circumstances and place you firmly in the driver's seat of your own life experience. Picture the scene. Rome, 161 AD. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the known world, sits in his tent on the Germanic frontier, not plotting military strategies or counting his vast wealth, but writing personal reflections on how to live a good life. Despite commanding legions, ruling an empire, and possessing unimaginable power, he understood that true strength came not from external control but from internal mastery. In his personal journal, later known as Meditations, he wrote words that would echo through centuries. "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This wasn't mere philosophy for Marcus Aurelius. It was a practical tool for navigating the immense pressures of leadership, the weight of responsibility, and the inevitable challenges that life throws at every human being, regardless of their station. But what does it really mean to detach emotionally, and how can this ancient wisdom transform your modern life? Emotional detachment, as understood by the Stoics, isn't about becoming cold, unfeeling, or indifferent to the world around you. It's not about suppressing your emotions or pretending they don't exist. Instead, it's about developing a sophisticated understanding of the difference between what you can control and what you cannot, and learning to invest your emotional energy only in those things within your sphere of influence. When you truly grasp this distinction, something remarkable happens. You begin to experience a profound sense of freedom that most people never taste in their entire lives. Consider the story of Epictetus, born into slavery in the 1st century AD, who would become one of history's most influential philosophers. Imagine the daily humiliation, the physical hardship, the complete lack of freedom that defined his early life. Yet it was precisely these harsh circumstances that led him to one of the most liberating realizations in human history. He discovered that while his body could be enslaved, his mind remained free. While others could control his external circumstances, they had no power over his thoughts, judgments, and inner responses. This insight became the foundation of his teaching. No one can harm you without your permission. Think about that for a moment. No one can harm you without your permission. This doesn't mean that bad things won't happen to you, but it means that your inner peace, your sense of self-worth, and your fundamental well-being remain under your control. The first principle of emotional detachment that can revolutionize your life is understanding the dichotomy of control. Every single thing in your life falls into one of two categories: things you can control and things you cannot. The Stoics were obsessed with this distinction because they recognized it as the key to human flourishing. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that he could control his thoughts, his judgments, his actions, and his responses, but he could not control other people's behavior, natural disasters, economic conditions, or even his own reputation. When you truly internalize this principle, you stop wasting precious mental and emotional energy on things beyond your control and focus all your power on the areas where you can actually make a difference. Let's bring this into your daily life. You wake up tomorrow morning and check your phone to find an angry email from your boss, criticism from a colleague, or disappointing news about a project you've been working on. Your natural response might be anger, anxiety, or frustration. But what if, instead of immediately reacting emotionally, you pause and ask yourself, what part of this situation can I actually control? You can't control your boss's mood, your colleague's opinion, or the outcome of every project, but you can control how you interpret the situation, how you respond, and what actions you take moving forward. This simple shift in perspective transforms you from a victim of circumstances into an active agent in your own life. Seneca, the wealthy Roman advisor and philosopher, understood this principle intimately. Despite his vast fortune and political influence, he regularly practiced voluntary discomfort, imagining the loss of his wealth, status, and even his life. This wasn't masochistic self-torture, it was strategic emotional preparation. By mentally rehearsing potential losses, he reduced their power to disturb his peace of mind. He wrote, "What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster. Therefore, let not your mind be crushed beneath a sudden impulse. Long before the event, let your mind be prepared for what may happen." When you practice this kind of mental preparation, you develop what the Stoics called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, which builds your emotional resilience and reduces your attachment to outcomes you cannot guarantee. The second transformative principle is learning to separate events from your judgments about those events. The Stoics recognized that it's not what happens to you that determines your experience, but how you interpret what happens to you. Epictetus taught his students that we are disturbed not by things themselves, but by our opinions about things. This insight has the power to completely change your relationship with adversity, disappointment, and challenge. Picture this scenario. You've been working toward a promotion for months, putting in extra hours, exceeding expectations, and building relationships with key stakeholders. The day finally arrives when the decision is announced, and you don't get the position. The external event is neutral, it's simply a fact that someone else received the promotion. But your interpretation of this event will determine whether you experience devastating disappointment or see it as valuable feedback and redirection. The person who interprets this as evidence of their inadequacy, as proof that hard work doesn't pay off, or as a personal attack will suffer greatly. The person who interprets it as information about areas for improvement, as redirection toward better opportunities, or as a chance to practice resilience, will actually benefit from the same exact circumstance. Marcus Aurelius faced this challenge on a massive scale when dealing with betrayals, military setbacks, and political opposition. Rather than interpreting these events as personal affronts or evidence that the world was against him, he practiced reframing them as opportunities to develop virtue, strengthen his character, and serve the greater good. In his journal, he wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Instead of allowing the actions of others to dictate his emotional state, he used every challenge as raw material for personal growth and philosophical development. You can apply this same principle to every area of your life. When someone cuts you off in traffic, instead of interpreting it as a personal insult and allowing anger to ruin your day, you can see it as an opportunity to practice patience and maintain your inner peace. When a relationship ends, instead of interpreting it as proof that you're unlovable, you can see it as information about compatibility and a chance to develop a deeper relationship with yourself. When you face financial setbacks, instead of interpreting them as evidence of your failure, you can see them as motivation to develop new skills and explore different opportunities. The third principle that will transform your life is developing what the Stoics called amor fati, love of fate. This doesn't mean passively accepting everything that happens to you, but rather embracing the totality of your experience, including the challenges, setbacks, and difficulties as necessary components of your growth and development. Nietzsche, heavily influenced by Stoic philosophy, described amor fati as not merely to endure what happens of necessity, but to love it. Consider how this principle played out in the life of Marcus Aurelius. He didn't choose to be emperor. The role was thrust upon him when he would have preferred to continue his philosophical studies. He didn't choose to spend years fighting Germanic tribes on the frontier. Circumstances demanded it. He didn't choose to deal with plagues, natural disasters, and political intrigue. These challenges came with the territory of leadership. But rather than resenting his fate or wishing for different circumstances, he embraced his role as an opportunity to practice Stoic virtue on the grandest possible stage. He wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate associates you." This principle has immediate practical applications in your life. Instead of fighting against your current circumstances, asking "why me?" or wishing things were different, you can begin to see your challenges as perfectly designed opportunities for growth. The difficult boss who pushes your buttons is teaching you patience and emotional regulation. The financial pressure you're experiencing is motivating you to develop new skills and find creative solutions. The relationship conflicts you're navigating are helping you understand yourself more deeply and communicate more effectively. When you shift from resistance to acceptance, from victim mentality to growth mindset, you stop wasting energy on resentment and channel all your power toward positive action. The fourth principle involves understanding the temporary nature of all external things and developing what the Stoics called memento mori, remembering death. This isn't morbid obsession with mortality, but rather a practical tool for maintaining perspective and avoiding excessive attachment to temporary pleasures or devastating attachment to temporary setbacks. Marcus Aurelius regularly reminded himself that everything he saw around him, including himself, would eventually pass away. This awareness helped him appreciate the present moment while avoiding the trap of thinking that current circumstances, whether positive or negative, would last forever. Seneca practiced this principle by regularly imagining the loss of everything he held dear. He would spend days living as if he had lost his wealth, eating simple food, wearing plain clothes, and sleeping on the ground. This practice served two purposes. It prepared him emotionally for potential losses, and it helped him appreciate what he had while he had it. He discovered that most of the things he thought were necessities for happiness were actually luxuries, and that his fundamental well-being didn't depend on external circumstances. You can apply this principle by regularly reflecting on the temporary nature of your current situation. The stress you're experiencing at work won't last forever. The relationship conflict you're navigating will eventually resolve one way or another. The financial pressure you're under is a temporary challenge, not a permanent condition. Similarly, the successes you achieve, the praise you receive, and the comfortable circumstances you enjoy are also temporary gifts to be appreciated but not clung to desperately. When you truly understand impermanence, you develop a balanced perspective that allows you to engage fully with life while maintaining emotional equilibrium. The fifth transformative principle is learning to focus on your character and actions rather than on outcomes and results. The Stoics believe that the only true good is virtue, meaning wisdom, justice, courage, and self-discipline. Everything else, including wealth, reputation, pleasure, and even health, they classified as indifferent, meaning neither inherently good nor bad. This doesn't mean these things don't matter at all, but that they shouldn't be the primary focus of your attention or the source of your happiness and self-worth. Epictetus, despite his background as a slave, developed unshakable inner freedom by focusing entirely on his character development rather than on his external circumstances. He couldn't control whether he was free or enslaved, wealthy or poor, praised or criticized, but he could control whether he responded to every situation with wisdom, integrity, and courage. This focus on character over circumstances gave him a sense of dignity and purpose that no external force could diminish. In your own life, this principle manifests as shifting your attention from results you cannot guarantee to processes you can control. Instead of obsessing over whether you'll get the promotion, focus on doing excellent work and developing your skills. Instead of worrying about whether someone will like you, focus on being authentic, kind, and interesting. Instead of stressing about investment returns, focus on making wise financial decisions and living below your means. This shift from outcome-focused thinking to process-focused thinking reduces anxiety, increases motivation, and paradoxically often leads to better results because you're channeling your energy more effectively. The sixth principle involves developing emotional resilience through the practice of negative visualization. The Stoics regularly imagined losing the things they valued most, not to become pessimistic or depressed, but to build psychological immunity against future setbacks and to cultivate gratitude for what they currently possessed. This practice, called premeditatio malorum, was like emotional weightlifting, strengthening their ability to handle whatever life might throw at them. Seneca wrote extensively about this practice, explaining that by imagining potential losses ahead of time, we remove their power to devastate us if they actually occur. He spent time visualizing the loss of his wealth, his health, his friends, and even his life. This wasn't morbid rumination but strategic preparation. Just as a vaccine introduces a small amount of disease to build immunity against the full-strength version, negative visualization introduces manageable amounts of imagined adversity to build resilience against real-world challenges. You can practice this by regularly spending a few minutes imagining potential setbacks or losses in your life. What if you lost your job tomorrow? How would you handle it? What resources would you draw upon? What opportunities might emerge from such a change? By thinking through these scenarios ahead of time, you develop contingency plans, reduce anxiety about uncertainty, and build confidence in your ability to handle whatever comes your way. You also develop deeper appreciation for what you currently have, since imagining its loss makes you realize how much you've been taking for granted. The seventh principle focuses on the power of perspective and the practice of viewing your life from different vantage points. Marcus Aurelius regularly practiced what we might call the view from above, imagining himself and his problems from the perspective of the cosmos, from the viewpoint of future generations, or through the lens of eternity. This practice helped him maintain perspective during difficult times and avoid getting overwhelmed by temporary challenges. When facing political opposition or military setbacks, Marcus would remind himself that from the perspective of history, these events were mere blips in the vast timeline of human experience. When dealing with difficult people, he would imagine how their behavior might look from their own perspective, considering what fears, insecurities, or pressures might be driving their actions. This practice of shifting perspectives prevented him from taking things personally and helped him respond to challenges with wisdom rather than emotional reactivity. You can apply this principle by regularly stepping back and viewing your current situation from different angles. When you're stressed about a deadline at work, imagine how this will matter in 10 years or even 10 days. When you're frustrated with someone's behavior, try to understand what might be motivating them from their perspective. When you're disappointed about a setback, consider how this experience might be preparing you for future opportunities or teaching you valuable lessons. This practice of perspective shifting is like having a mental zoom lens that you can adjust to maintain emotional balance and make better decisions. The eighth principle involves understanding the difference between preferences and attachments. The Stoics weren't advocating for complete indifference to external circumstances, but rather for what they called preferred indifference. This means you can have preferences about how things turn out, while maintaining emotional equilibrium, regardless of the actual outcome. You can prefer health over sickness, wealth over poverty, and success over failure, but your fundamental well-being and sense of self-worth shouldn't depend on getting what you prefer. Seneca, despite his enormous wealth, maintained this balanced relationship with material possessions. He enjoyed his riches, but was prepared to lose them at any moment. He wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." This attitude allowed him to make the most of his fortunate circumstances while maintaining inner peace and dignity when those circumstances changed, as they inevitably did when he fell out of political favor and ultimately faced execution. In your daily life, this principle translates to holding your goals and desires lightly. You can work hard for the promotion while being genuinely okay with not getting it. You can hope for good health while accepting illness with grace. You can desire loving relationships while maintaining your sense of completeness as an individual. This balanced approach reduces anxiety, increases resilience, and often leads to better outcomes because you're not operating from a place of desperate need or attachment. The ninth transformative principle is the practice of present moment awareness and the recognition that the past and future exist only in your mind. The Stoics understood that all of life happens in the present moment, and that most human suffering comes from mentally dwelling in past regrets or future anxieties. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present, recognizing that the present moment is the only place where you have any actual power or control." This doesn't mean ignoring the lessons of the past or failing to plan for the future, but rather avoiding the trap of living psychologically in times that don't actually exist. When you find yourself ruminating about past mistakes or worrying about future possibilities, you're essentially choosing to suffer about things that aren't happening right now. The Stoics developed various practices for anchoring their attention in the present moment, including regular reflection on the day's events, mindful attention to current sensations and experiences, and consistent focus on what they could do right now rather than what they wished they had done differently or what they feared might happen later. You can cultivate this present moment awareness by regularly checking in with yourself throughout the day. When you notice your mind wandering into past regrets or future worries, gently redirect your attention to what's happening right now. What can you see, hear, feel, or do in this moment? What opportunities for kindness, growth, or positive action are available to you right here, right now? This practice of present moment awareness reduces anxiety, increases effectiveness, and enhances your appreciation for the richness of immediate experience. The 10th and perhaps most profound principle is understanding that true freedom comes not from external circumstances, but from internal mastery. The Stoics discovered that the person who depends on external things for their happiness is essentially a slave to those things, while the person who finds their center within themselves possesses a freedom that no external force can touch. Epictetus, who knew both literal slavery and philosophical freedom, taught that the path to liberation lies in recognizing what is truly up to you and focusing all your attention and energy there. This internal freedom manifests as the ability to maintain your values, dignity, and peace of mind, regardless of what's happening around you. It's the capacity to respond rather than react, to choose your behavior based on your principles rather than on your emotions or circumstances. It's the power to find meaning and purpose in any situation, even the most challenging ones. When you develop this kind of internal mastery, you become truly unstoppable, not because you can control everything that happens to you, but because you can control everything that matters: your thoughts, your choices, and your character. Throughout history, we see examples of individuals who embodied this principle under the most extreme circumstances. Viktor Frankl, though not technically a Stoic, demonstrated Stoic principles in Nazi concentration camps, discovering that even in the most horrific external circumstances, he retained the freedom to choose his attitude and find meaning in his suffering. Nelson Mandela spent decades in prison, but emerged not broken or bitter, but with his dignity and vision intact, having used his time of confinement to develop the character that would eventually transform a nation. As you begin to implement these Stoic principles in your own life, you'll start to notice a remarkable shift in your relationship with challenges, setbacks, and difficulties. Instead of seeing them as obstacles to your happiness, you'll begin to recognize them as opportunities for growth, character development, and the practical application of wisdom. You'll find that your emotional reactions become less intense and more manageable, not because you're suppressing your feelings, but because you're developing a more sophisticated understanding of what deserves your emotional investment and what doesn't. The transformation that comes from emotional detachment, properly understood, isn't about becoming cold or uncaring. If anything, it's about becoming more loving, more present, and more effective in all your relationships and endeavors. When you're not constantly worried about protecting your ego, controlling outcomes, or managing other people's opinions of you, you have more energy available for genuine connection, creative problem-solving, and meaningful contribution. You become more attractive to others because you're operating from a place of strength and centeredness, rather than neediness and anxiety. This ancient wisdom offers you a path to unshakable inner peace, regardless of what storms may rage in the external world. It provides practical tools for navigating the inevitable challenges of human existence with grace, dignity, and wisdom. Most importantly, it reveals the profound truth that you already possess everything you need for a fulfilling life. You simply need to learn how to access and develop the resources that lie within you. The journey toward emotional detachment and Stoic wisdom isn't always easy, but it's infinitely rewarding. Every time you choose to focus on what you can control rather than what you cannot, every time you interpret a setback as an opportunity rather than a catastrophe, every time you respond to difficulty with courage rather than despair, you're building the kind of character that can weather any storm and find meaning in any circumstance. As you move forward from this moment, remember that transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen one choice at a time, one response at a time, one day at a time. The Stoic philosophers spent their entire lives practicing these principles, constantly refining their understanding and application of this ancient wisdom. You're not expected to master these concepts immediately, but you can begin implementing them right now, starting with whatever challenge or opportunity is currently in front of you. The power to transform your life through emotional detachment is not some mystical ability reserved for ancient philosophers or exceptional individuals. It's a practical skill set that any person can develop through consistent practice and sincere commitment. The Stoics have left you a roadmap, tested over centuries and validated by countless individuals who have used these principles to create lives of meaning, purpose, and unshakable inner strength. Your journey toward emotional freedom begins now, in this moment, with your next thought, your next choice, your next response to whatever life presents to you. The ancient Stoics are calling across the centuries, inviting you to join their ranks, to discover the profound peace that comes from mastering yourself rather than trying to master the world. Will you accept their invitation? Will you begin the practice that can transform not just how you feel, but who you become? The choice, as always, is entirely up to you, and that choice is where your true power lies. Take this wisdom and make it your own. Practice it in your daily life, share it with others who might benefit, and remember that every moment offers a new opportunity to apply these timeless principles. Your transformation awaits, and the journey begins with a single step: the decision to focus on what you can control and let go of what you cannot. This is the path to freedom, the way to peace, and the secret to a life well lived.